Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome to our Black Unicorn channel, and today we're going to be talking about feminism. What is feminism? What I'm talking about today is just general feminism or European feminism. It's really important that we understand this, that we understand what it is, what it does, because it definitely guides a lot of what's going on in the mainstream. We'll get very confused over time if we don't take a chance to get to understand what it is. So on its face, feminism is just supposed to be, it goes off the assumption that the way society at least was not equal towards men and women, that men and women did not have equal rights. And so, in society. And so, feminists are looking to make sure that women get the same rights, legal rights, as men do. And this includes the right to vote, the right to own property, the right to run for office, hold a public office, to have certain jobs, to have certain careers, to even go to certain schools, study certain things. And the list goes on. There's a lot of little things, join the military, be in the infantry. There's a lot of things, have rights to have a gun rights. There's a lot of things that historically women weren't able to do. So I want to break this down as we get into, so now we know what feminism is. On its face, it's just about creating legal equality. But why was it felt that it was needed? Why is it a thing? For us to truly understand this, what we really need to understand is their history of communities over time. There is a good book I read called Eve's Seed, and it was about the invention of agriculture and how it shifted human society and male-female relations. Very fascinating read. I may be able to link to it in the description, but look it up. It's called Eve's Seed. In that book, it discusses how when we were a hunter-gatherer society, the men went on the hunt, the women gathered. And that's a very key thing to understand. There was generally a separation of the sexes. Males and females pretty much did not spend time together, were not together, except when they were very young, because they were being raised by their mothers, and then when they're married, of course. But generally speaking, even as villages came together to eat, to do various things, the males and the females were separate. And we still see this today in certain cultures around the world, where for the most part men and women are separate. What's useful about understanding this is that there were then two societies. There was the home society, in which women had the power and control at home. And then there was the external society, social, the village, the politics, where the men were on the hunt. And that's where men had their own system of power. And that's why by usually around age 10-ish, the boys would kind of go off to be trained with the men on how to become a man. A lot of our tribes have this in the motherland, where you coming of age rituals, scarifications. A classic example in European Western culture is the Jews have the bar mitzvah, now bat mitzvah for the ladies, but it used to be just the bar mitzvah. For the men, at 13, you start to become a man. Right, and you have to go through these rites of passage. So that's a very important thing to consider, that there were two societies. The women we had our own rituals, our own rites of passage, very well documented, understood. We look at the motherland and our cultures there. Scarification sometimes as well, very different ways. We had rites of passage, and the men did too. Okay, and as adults, women's power was in the home. She was the one cooking and cleaning and weaving the baskets and making the clothes and everything. All the clothing the men wore, women would make it. And the men had to hunt. Now, when there wasn't able to hunt, when there was no hunt, men would gather as well. But they would generally try to gather things that women couldn't gather. This is where society used to be. Then you have agriculture. And agriculture starts to shift the structure, because now we can have food in a surplus. So now we don't need women to gather as much. And in fact, the men are taking over the hunt. There's less of the hunt, because now we also get into husbandry. This is where that term husband comes from, animal husbandry, taking care of animals. And so now men are kind of that's where Eve's Seed comes in, men taking over this role. And they are handling the food. Food's in a surplus, but now you need more hands to manage the farm. And so now you need women to stay home and raise babies. Women become baby machines. We didn't used to have that many children when we were hunter-gatherers because you had to feed them. And a woman usually was breastfeeding and carrying the baby until it was about 2. So there really wasn't the ability to have children. Usually children were about 2 to 3 years apart because of this. Agriculture comes in, mom can just pump out babies, 10 babies. And as people moved inside, disease became to be a much bigger thing. It existed before, of course, but it was different. Homes became more strongly built because more permanent now instead of being a little more nomadic, and society shifted. Within that, then you have a surplus of people sometimes, a surplus of males, and men are sitting around talking, and now we've got all this grain, let's count the grain, and now we have a system for counting grain. We don't just grow the grain, we harvest the grain, we clean it, we count it, we maintain it, we distribute it, and they create a society, a very developed society to do this. And so they make sure creating law and authority. Because women had authority, women had law. If a man wanted to get married, he had to go to his father, and maybe he would talk to other men about it. But the wives were very much a part of this process. And matchmakers, historically, if any culture had matchmakers, they were almost always women. Because clearly, the women know the women. They know which girl you want to talk to. And it's just a social thing. We're better communicators. That's what we're here for. And so you had one society of the women, you had a society of the men. It happened over time, and now I'm focusing more on the Europeans here. Because when you look at melanated peoples, Africans, and even those in the Americas, the natives to the Americas, we were a bit more equal between men and women. Of course, there were things that men and women couldn't do, and punishment otherwise, but women had their power. They were very much respected, even in Asia as well. I'm gonna leave you all out. Women had their power, their role, they were very respected. Men had their power and their role, they were very respected. But something about these Europeans, that wasn't happening. And so these laws oftentimes were used to oppress the women. Or at least women felt that way. Over time, the respect for what women did was lost and lost. This wasn't quick. This was over hundreds of years, millennia, plural, millennia, in which women's roles and power was devalued, ignored, and also this continuous shift, because even in the 1800s, you still had women making clothing. So when you need a woman to wear, you need a woman to have the clothing on your back, you're going to respect her. Obviously good food, right? Those kinds of things. I mean, sure, maybe you might have had the baker, but that usually was rare because that's for the wealthy. Among just the standard everyday people, women had a huge role and they were respected for their role. As industrialization came along, as we started creating cottage industries, the Industrial Revolution, the Iron Age, speeding through history here a bit, 1800s to 1900s, that's when the roles started to shift. They wanted to make young women into workers, to make money, to work in the textile mills. Before textile mills, the cottage industry used to be, that's where the term spinster came from. A spinster is a single woman who spins cloth all day and doesn't have a husband. She was empowered to not have a husband. She couldn't afford to not have a husband because she could work. She could stay home and spin. And so women started to work. As women started to work, they started to earn money, independence. They started to do less of their home work, their home jobs, and more of those jobs became into men's fields or became industries. That's where a baker comes from. Your butcher, your baker, your candlestick maker. Those used to be things wives did. The man would go hunt the fox. He'd go on a fox hunt, let's say, and the man would bring the foxes home, and he might do the basic skin them for her because she doesn't want to skin it. Some women would, right? But he might skin it and otherwise gut it. She would then cook it and take the hide and sew it into the fur cap that he would wear. with industrialization, you might have box farming, and instead of and then you might go to the tannery, and there'd be a man whose job it is to tan the hides. And you might still have the textile mills where products are being sold. What is important to understand is, over time in European culture, a lot of the power that women had at home slowly but surely being taken away by industrialization. And women were being put to work, which is really a men's role. The gender lines are first being blurred by this to get workers. Because men were doing their own thing. Men are like, I'm gonna do my thing. I'm not gonna go work at some textile mill. And then you sent the girls there. And this is how this started to happen. And so the women wanted to get more of this power. They're like, wait a minute, I'm working like a man. I deserve power. This is especially prevalent, especially in the United States of America. When you look at the history, and then with slavery. So we see this industrialization happening in the north of the United States, in the south of the United States. What you had was the slavery, this was the plantation. And on the plantation, now I'm speaking more about the wealthier class who had the plantations, who owned the plantations. The wives weren't doing their jobs. Those were given to the slaves because they were too wealthy. And not just another white woman as a maid, but to an African slave. And so her home power was being given to these African women. She had lost her home power. The only power she had was to oppress her home slaves. This is where the Casual Killing Act comes in, because it was mostly white women, the women who were out here beating their slaves to death and harming them horribly. Why? Because they needed to instill power. There was no question that the white man had power. But the white woman's power is like, what is it? You're just here to make babies for white babies for massa, because we're over here making babies for massa too, because he's raping us or sleeping with us or wenching. And so, as then you look at post Civil War, as the major plantation style shifted, you're still seeing where, again, white women's power, you still had maids and black women who are doing the woman's role. And white men, of course, are sexing the black women, giving and appreciating them in a sense, because to any extent, men are going to be attracted to female submission. No matter what the reason, they're going to be attracted to it. And so when your woman is serving you, it's attractive. How often do you see that in film and movies? A woman serves a man, and he looks at her wrist, he looks up her arm, looks at her chest and her neck, and it's like a little moment of like, because it's so attractive. And so white women were seeing this power. This is exemplified very well in the 1975 film Mandingo. But what helps you understand is there was a power dynamic that was going on. White women needed the power to oppress the African. A European woman needed the power to oppress Africans and the other people of color. As the white man the European culture is one of oppression inherently. And the European woman cannot oppress the European man. She cannot also oppress even those of color without the power. She needs the power to make decisions so that she can move in her best interest. And so that's where feminism came. We need the right to vote. We need the right to work. We need rights. We're being taken advantage of by the system because we're not getting the power at home. We're not cooking anymore. We're not cleaning. We're no longer doing a lot of the things that gave us social power. We don't make the clothes anymore. Machines are doing that. And women are the ones working these machines. Anyways, we need power. And so that's feminism. That's why we have feminism. That's the history of feminism. Helps you understand feminism, but just on a very basic level, so you can understand what feminism is, where did it come from, and why does it exist? All right. In our next video, we're going to discuss who it helps, and not who you think. Take care. Bye.